And so now we're going to talk about Brown stages 4 and 5, Pragmatics. In this lecture, we're going to be focusing on one particular domain of language. The reason why I've chosen to look at pragmatics separately is because I want to make sure that we have a clear link through the development. We want to make sure that we tie a clear link through the development of these skills as children progress through the toddler and preschool years. The developments of these children in terms of pragmatic language skills are directly tied to the development of all of their other language skills that we've been discussing. That is, the more they develop other skills, such as complex syntax and use different words, the more they have to talk about. And the more they have to talk about means that they have to figure out the rules that are necessary for having conversations in the particular culture in which they're raised. And so our learning objectives for this section are to describe how pragmatic language skills develop in Brown Stage 4 and 5, and also to define key terminology. Throughout this discussion, we will be using the following terminology to discuss the development of pragmatic language skills. The first of these is topic maintenance. Simply, this means staying on topic when a conversation is being had. Additionally, we'll talk about turn taking. Within this context, we will want to talk about the number of turns that children are able to take in a particular conversation. Additionally, we'll talk about conversational repair, which occurs when a speaker realizes that the person they are speaking to does not understand what it is that they are talking about. We've also mentioned presupposition before, which has to do with knowing how much information to provide to the person who you're speaking with. In addition, children have to learn to adjust their speech depending on who they're speaking with. This is called register variation. They also must learn how to request and ask people to do things. As we get older, this skill becomes more difficult because we have to figure out subtle ways to ask for things. We'll speak about deixis, which has to do with using certain pairs of words that provide reference to where something is in space. And finally, we'll speak about ellipsis, which is understanding when to not provide redundant information in a conversation. And so we're actually going to begin with a quick review of what happens during discourse during Brown Stage 2 and 3 in order to set up what it is that we're going to speak about with Brown Stages 4 and 5. Remember that during our discussion of pragmatic language and conversation early on, we spoke about the fact that dialogues were pretty brief. For example, children were taking 2 turns per topic. Additionally, the things they spoke about were things that were present. One of the things that changes as children move through Brown Stages 4 and 5 is that they begin to talk about things that are decontextualized. Additionally, early on with topic maintenance, they continue topics by repeating things that they had already said, and by Brown Stage 3 they were adding some new information. Remember though, this was pretty basic. Children are also learning a bit about things like politeness very early on. For example, in our culture, they might be taught to use the word please. Additionally, they are beginning to learn to misrepresent the truth. However, this is a skill that continues to develop as children get older. Additionally, by the time they're at Brown Stage 3, they might be making some requests when they do not understand something. This is actually a skill that develops as well. It's called the ability to signal non-comprehension. And so what we're going to do as we progress into Brown Stage 4 and 5 here is split up our discussion into 2 sections to try to make what we spoke about earlier on with terminology a bit easier. During this section, we're going to talk about things like topic maintenance, turn taking, and conversational repair. Remember what we are talking about with topic maintenance. We're talking about staying on topic when we're taking turns about a conversation. By the time children reach the ages of 4 and 5, they're able to do this for more than 2 turns at a time. Additionally, by age 5, they're able to maintain topics for 5 turns. As adults, we typically do this for 11 turns. Children are still using repetition and imitation in order to maintain this conversation, but this will change as they get older. Finally, remember that in Brown Stage 3, children were beginning to make some requests for clarification. In stages 4 and 5, they're beginning to do this more consistently when they do not understand something. Although we mentioned that in stage 2, children were beginning to use words of politeness such as please, a lot of these rules are actually quite complex. As children move through stages 4 and 5, they're still figuring this out. Additionally, they're still talking about things that are generally in the present, but we will see more discussion about things that are decontextualized. In fact, narrative is typically a discourse genre in which children are able to practice talking about things that are not present. In terms of actually taking turns, children in stages 4 and 5 have a better understanding of what a pause means when they are taking turns. Think about how complicated a skill this is. When we have a conversation, we have to know exactly how long an appropriate pause is for us to respond. It takes children a while to figure this out. Children have to understand that waiting more than a second means that a response may not be forthcoming from the conversation partner. Children also become better at understanding how to respond to requests for clarification. However, it can still be difficult for kids at this stage to understand nonverbal requests. They still have difficulty, however, signaling non-comprehension, as we had mentioned before. So what this means is that they are better at responding to requests for clarification, as opposed to making requests for clarification. Typically, when they do it, it is not made in the same way that adults make these types of requests. For example, if I don't understand something in a conversation, I will specifically ask the conversation partner about that. Children, during this stage, will typically be non-specific in their requests for clarification. In this section, we will talk about some other skills, such as presupposition, making indirect requests, and deixis. Before age 3, children have difficulty with presupposition. Therefore, adults have a difficult time following the conversation. Following their 3rd birthday, children make some meaningful presuppositions. We spoke quite a bit about presuppositional skills in previous lectures. Remember, this is about being sure that you can provide appropriate amounts of information to your conversation partner. Children after the age of 3 become a little bit better at this, but are still developing this skill. It's closely tied to the development of other language skills. For example, common presuppositional tools include demonstratives, pronouns, proper nouns, some verbs, WH questions, and other forms of address. Adjusting speech is closely related to presupposition. This is because there are differences in the way you speak to one person versus the way you speak to another person. For example, if you're a preschooler, the way you speak to a classmate should probably be different than the way you speak to your teacher. This becomes more important as we get older. It's also called register variation. To be clear, this is a skill that is not mastered by the end of Brown stages 4 and 5. In fact, it's something that children need to work on through the school-age years. Another really important point about the development of pragmatic skills is in looking at directives and requests. As we get older, we get better at getting others to do things. For example, if I wanted a snack in the break room here at work, I probably wouldn't say, "Give me that." I might say, "Can you please pass the tray of candies?" It should be noted that there are conventional indirect requests and unconventional indirect requests. The example here of a conventional indirect request is considered indirect because you're really not asking the person if they can pass the salt. It's just a polite way of making that request. The indirect unconventional request that's here is unconventional because you're not actually asking for the thing that you want. This is an example of how you might get someone to turn on the air conditioner without asking them to turn on the air conditioner. Again, preschoolers will get better at this as time progresses. This, like many of the skills, gets better as we have more language and continues to develop into the school-age years. In fact, we're going to look at the progression of it in the next slide. As children get older, we can see a little bit about the development of these indirect forms. Think about how it is that these could be related to modals, such as may, might, and should. Some more examples of indirect requests include, "Can I go outside?" "Could you get my juice?" In the preschool years, children learn that caregivers respond more positively to these types of requests. It should be noted that some of these are requests and some are directives where permission is not really being asked. Deixis is a concept that appears to be complicated, but it really isn't. It just has to do with specifying where something is or when something is in relation to one person's perspective. An easy way to think about it is with word pairs such as here and there, this and that, and I and you. If you look at the example that's provided here, I think that this pizza is better than that pizza has different meanings depending on who says it. So, I could be referring to one type of pizza with this and that, and another person might be referring to a completely different pizza. This can make it complicated for children to acquire the use of these kinds of words. As children get older, they get better at using them. Think about how the use of these words is related to all these different pragmatic language skills that we've spoken about. Additionally, think about how it's related to different aspects of language, such as the development of semantics and syntax. Basically, nothing happens in a vacuum, and all of these skills, are related to one another. The final skill we're going to speak about is ellipsis. This skill involves deleting information that could be redundant. For example, if I said, "Where's my purse?" the answer would be probably in the restaurant. It would not be your purse is probably in the restaurant. This is something that continues to develop through the school-age years. You can probably see how important this is in having a conversation that does not appear awkward. And so, our learning objectives for this section were to describe how pragmatic language skills develop in Brown stages 4 and 5. Additionally, I want to make sure that you can define the key terminology that we spoke about earlier.